Hello and welcome to Lockdown Beers here on New Zealand Sport Radio. Hi, I'm Paul, and I'm sorry I'm late. Jeez, I've missed the 5 o'clock, so I better open the beer now instead. There we go. It's another twoie, and tomorrow I'll be heading to the supermarket to get myself a new 12 pack. So thinking a pack of Waikato draft, but you let me know what you think I should get hold of. Looking at around about the $20 mark for a can of 12 instead of 12. Remember, I'm not in there with the big spenders in beer. Leave the gas in the glass, and all of that kind of stuff. Just to give you an update as to what we're going to be up to. This will continue on at 5 p.m. every day, except for Friday and Saturday. Friday, I will be on the road at this point, driving to Hamilton to be at the Waikato versus Canterbury at FMG Stadium. They're allowing me in under level 2 restrictions, and also on Saturday. So that's we won't be doing this because I will have been down in Tauranga for Bay of Plenty versus Otago in the Farah Palmer Cup. They're going to let me within the Bay of Plenty Rugby Union, let me within their bubble for that game as well. So no lockdown beers on Friday and Saturday this week, folks, but every other day as we help the 09 get through this period. And from the 09, we have Stephen. How are you doing, sir? And Stephen's up to his normal tricks of not bothering to turn off mute.
I've got to say, doesn't stop everybody else from having a lockdown beer on Friday just because we're not having one. So, man, be our guest if you want to go ahead and have a lockdown beer.
Absolutely. We just won't be having a rugby chat for you to join. Don't forget, folks, that I put the link out to join these every single day on Twitter. So if you'd like to come on screen and chat with myself and Stephen and whoever else is joining me, then please feel free to come along. Otherwise, you can put in live comments through the live chat on YouTube, Twitter, and also Facebook. And we're also putting these recordings out as a podcast as well. Just search for New Zealand Sports Radio on your favorite podcatcher. Whew, lots and lots. First name up on the old whiteboard. I do a little whiteboard each day to remind ourselves what topics there are. We won't get through all of these topics today, folks, because we've got the Driving Mall show this evening at 8 p.m. as well. So we'll save some of them for that. But Paul Tito is the latest signing for the Western Force. Stephen, he's going to go over there as their forwards coach. He's currently part of the Wellington Lions setup. Not somebody that I know a lot about, but some ex-player for Taranaki. Also played for the Chiefs and the Hurricanes a bit before heading over to Cardiff, where he played up until 2012. I'm not sure what coaching he's been doing since then, but I think they mentioned that he did 3 years at Taranaki. I don't know if that was as the head coach or not, but yeah, they really are beefing up their back office, aren't they?
Gee, for a guy you don't know much about, that was quite the spiel, Paul, I've got to say. Yeah, really, really good footballer, New Zealand Māori, really good sort of honest, sort of good provincial type New Zealand footballer, but obviously good enough to pick up a contract in Cardiff. He's done I think the coaching rounds with Taranaki. So yeah, he'll be a good acquisition to the Western Force.
Yep, Simon said, sorry, he missed yesterday's show, but he was keeping up with the Rugby World Cup qualifiers on the women's side of things. Both Ireland and Scotland lost their games. Ireland lost to Spain. There you go. And Italy beat Scotland. Look, Spain have got a pretty good women's setup, I've got to say, and really disappointing that they got chucked out of the Women's Six Nations to allow Italy in. The reason for that was to align it with the Men's Six Nations, essentially. No other reason than that. And so the Spain got kicked out, even though, as you can see, they've just beaten Ireland to qualify in their qualifier for the Women's Rugby World Cup. They also, I think, made it to Rio Sevens as well. I mean, they've got a real decent setup there on the women's side in Spain.
Yeah, a lot of investment has obviously gone into Italian rugby. Obviously, the part of the Six Nations, they see that as probably a better investment. You know how I feel about Italian men's rugby, but hopefully at some stage, and of course the women's rugby, hopefully some stage it's going to grow some fruit, because at the moment it's like a shoot and it hasn't really grown, shall I say.
Yeah, it's kind of sticking out of the ground, but it's we're waiting for it to see what kind of plant it's really going to be. We've seen that, we've got this kind of shoot, this sprout, and we'll see how it grows. Obviously, hopefully, it grows big and strong is the idea. But as the RFU said recently, that they're hoping other countries will become professional as well. Otherwise, they don't really want to leave everybody else behind. On that one, So what I'm probably going to do, just but bouncing around a bit here, is try reaching out to the CEO of the Western Force. I've just gone blank to his name off the top of my head, but he's someone that I interviewed when
Tony Lewis.
Tony Lewis, thank you for saving me there. Someone I interviewed when he was the CEO of Tasman Rugby. I think I'm going to try and reach out to him and see how it's going over there, because I say clearly he's running a lot of changes at the moment and doing a bit of hiring with 3 Kiwis joining him over there just in the last week. So we'll see how he's. So I'll see if I can get an interview with him, folks. Look out for that on the channel. Josh says ex-Otago winger Tony Lewis.
Wow,
and
good intel, Joshua.
So I'll whack up my long talk I did with him where we talked about his playing career, amongst other things as well. So because wasn't he a contemporary? I'm trying to get blank. No, I can either guess here, but I think he's a JK contemporary, which I think was stopped him from getting higher honours. If I remember rightly, but I can't. I'd have to go back and listen to that. It's been over a year since I've done that. So I did that interview. So we'll put that one up back on the socials, folks, for you to have a listen of. We had a 50-22 in the game at the week in the games at the weekend, and that was by Nick White up against for the Wallabies up against the Springboks, and I was quick to say, wow, it's our first test match 50-22 we've seen, and I got rightly corrected in the old Twitter, as you do, because apparently there was one during the Canada USA game that they had. But Stephen, so far not really seen much from the 50-22 making any difference. And you might want to take yourself off mute again.
I say not really. Sorry, I got a little bit of noise in the background here, so I've had to sort of mute myself. I was going to say we didn't. I was really surprised the Springboks didn't use it more, given that they have got a kicking game, but they obviously probably felt the aerial route was more the way to go. But boy, that was a great little 50-20 there by, I think it was Nick White, might have actually got one in, but it all turned to naught because they didn't end up winning the line out. No, it's, you know what, it's something that teams aren't using, and if it's not being used, why put it in there?
Yeah, absolutely. We've been having a bit of a chat. I mean, and I guess a bit of a theme that's been going on for a few months now, but it cropped up again in our Facebook chat group today that we have amongst the various kind of guests I have on the show, and about just, do we need more laws? Do we need more changes? Because I there was. I've gone blank as to the Barnes Scott. No, I want to say. Anyway, the English pundit Barnes, who takes a lot of flack, but he wrote an article basically saying how look at the game that the All Blacks played. We don't need these 12s or any of the other things. And then we had Bill Beaumont on the breakdown last night. I'm not a show I watch very often, but I watched it because he was on there. And Stephen, it's all about intent, isn't it? At the end of the day, you can make whatever rules you like, but it comes down to what the coaches and the players want to do. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. What they're doing, they're trying to speed up the game. Just before I go down that path, though, my Twitter handle is @Stephen73_H, and I've popped that article up, and it was written by former English and British Lions first five Stuart Barnes, and it's a very good. It's a very, very good piece. Well worth a read, and I think quite thought-provoking. You know, at the moment, instead of actually fixing what needs to be fixed, they're adding, let's go and just add another version of rugby, and primarily if you look at some of the rules that they've got, it basically says to me they want more play and want more play and basically sort of tight action within the 80 minutes. So I know Bill Beaumont said last night, and he used the analogy of having watched the Wallabies All Blacks game at Eden Park first test, and under 12 hours later watching the British Lions play South Africa, and it was two completely different games played in completely different styles. Now, when you got your head of World Rugby or your chairman of World Rugby putting that sort of message out, man, you've got a problem somewhere, and you've obviously got rules that are being injected to speed the game up. Well, I don't know if they're not being used. What's the point of them? The only thing I don't like about the goal line dropout, why should a team that's got a big pack and you can basically grind, get down into the opposition goal line, you go over the line, you are held up over the line, you should be entitled to that 5 metre scrum, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, and look, it's one of these pieces, isn't it, that the World Rugby and one of the things that Bill Bowman said, look, everything has to be evidence based, whereas you see a lot of people who will just throw ideas out there and say, oh, this will work. But he says, look, we have to be evidence based. We have to. That's why we trial things. Look, we try not to be an oil tanker in taking too long to respond. But we don't want to do things 2 years out before the Rugby World Cup, and B, we have to be evidence based. We can't just be going off hunches, which I think which is how a lot of us come up with these new laws. So, for example, I think we should reduce the number of replacements that are allowed during a game, because therefore players. The idea behind that being that players have to be conditioned to play the full 80 rather than just 60, which is what we're seeing now amongst props, amongst front rowers and some locks as well. And therefore you're reducing the size of the players because they have to be cardiovascular rather than power, and therefore they have to be able to. Therefore, the collision should be smaller. But is there any evidence for that? I don't know. There is, actually, to be honest. There is no evidence. It's just me thinking that is what will happen. Whereas, he is right that they have to be evidence based rather than just making things up on the fly. Whereas a lot of us, we can just throw these out there, and at the end of the day, if they happen or if they don't happen, there's no comeback on us, is there really? And they're trying to balance speed of play with player welfare. Which is one of the problems.
And I think the cost of putting squads together is front in mind as well. Something else, personally, I'd like to see a situation where you can only carry like leading up to a test, you can only carry X amount of players. I personally don't know why you need 30, almost virtually two squads. For me, I see no reason why you can't just hold the minimum 23, and maybe for those real key positions, like halfback and hooker, I suppose, come to mind, or even maybe prop, maybe just being able to carry an extra three to five players in squads leading up to the training as to carrying so many, because I mean to say that's got an absolute big cost factor. But it comes back to what we previously said, Paul. When your chairman of your game is basically scratching his head and he doesn't quite know what the silver bullet is, you've got a real problem.
And Josh said, the World Cup squad used to be only 26 strong. Now it's out to 32, and they're talking about expanding that even further for future Rugby World Cups. I guess some of the things is increased specialisation of players. At the moment, let's be honest, we now say that some. Back in the good old days, a lock or a loose row forward would fill in for an injured prop, for example, and you carry on with normal scrums. Nowadays, you can't do that. So there are some what do you call it? There are some reasons for it expanding to be bigger than 26, because you had to have four props and you have 23 days in a match, 23 in a match day squad now. That would only leave you with 3 spare players with 26. But I hear what you're saying, and it is, and it is again, it's a massive advantage for the tier 1 teams. Therefore, they won't vote against it. whereas the tier 2 teams can't afford it. And that's one of the things we keep hearing about from, or we not keep hearing about, one of the things we have heard about from the Pacific Island teams is, again, that cost around. The bigger and bigger the squads you make, the more and more costs they have to carry, and they just can't afford to do it. And hence they'll fall further and further back. So, yes, a real shame on that one. Bill Beaumont Clear was very careful not to openly criticise or openly bash the idea of of World 12s, but also very careful not to endorse it either. And definitely walking a bit of a tightrope there, wasn't he, Stephen?
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's there's a lot of people with serious investment here. Obviously somebody's stumped up with some cash to support the likes of the two Steves, Steve Hansen and Steve Chu, and I see there's apparently another Welshman that's in play who's got a little bit of money in his pocket as well. And that's kind of what it comes down to at the end of the day. But once again, I go back to the article that Stuart Barnes wrote, and he just marvelled at how the All Blacks were still able to basically use the whole width of the pitch, the skills, and it does come back down to attitude at the end of the day, Paul. If you're willing to try and play some code and develop this code, we've seen this with another example is the Australian team. I think under Checker, I always thought they were quite, conservative, but under Rennie, they just look like they've now got some players in specific positions and they're backing their skill.
Well, yeah, remember, so one of the things that probably about 5 or 6 years ago, now we were getting to is we were all really impressed with how the Lions out of South Africa started playing, and how they played a totally different style to the rest of South Africa. And the interesting thing was that all came about after a conversation with Dave Rennie after a Lions versus Chiefs game over in New Zealand, where Ackerman thought his side had played pretty well, but they'd been absolutely thumped. And he was like, what's going on here? And that was one of those light bulb moments that changed things.
Yep, and under his watch, they managed to get to 2 finals, and just unfortunate for them that both those finals happened to be a team called the Crusaders on the other side of the field. But, boy, they played rugby that was really pleasant on the eye. And I think back to that final, especially in South Africa, boy, they were coming home like a steam train, and I think they might have even been down a man as well, if I recall, in that particular game. So they can do this. I think that's all rugby supporters are really asking for. I mean, it's like, Paul, you watched more of that Lions Springbok series than I, and I'm pretty sure when you watch that game at specific times, you probably thought in your own head, oh, gee, there's an opportunity to move the ball. There's some space, but you could see that the fly halves were sitting in the pocket. And even in terms of the British Lions, it wasn't until they actually brought, was it Finn Russell, in for the last test, that, boy, all of a sudden they actually had somebody standing on the advantage line prepared to move the ball, as opposed to Dan Bigger, who sat in the pocket. Like, I'm sure somebody like Andre Pollard is a way better player than that. I can recall him 2 or 3 years ago, being a really good runner at the line. But he just seems like he's a shadow of that same player. Crazy.
Yeah, I mean, look, LB says, look, South Africa hasn't had a chance to work on their attack. It's been almost 2 years since not playing. Yes and no. But I think to me, if you look at how the Lions played, and to me, look, the Lions were as bad, if not worse, than the Springboks in their style of play in that series. So look, as a Lions supporter, look, the jersey's there. It's not an anti Springboks comment, because it's also an anti-Lions comment. It's the way both sides wanted to play was just mind-numbing. So I think it also comes back to what do, again, it's Razi's remit is across as director of rugby for South Africa, includes also the ex-Super Rugby franchises, what going to be the United Rugby Championship, and one of the things, with the exception again of you're looking at some of the Bulls, they're playing some nice rugby under Jake White, I think it is. So now look, we know they've got the players that can do it. It's a matter of it's the will, it's the want to do it.
Yeah.
there on that one. And look, as a John, our South African guy in our chat says, look, let's see where they're at after the November games. And yes, we will. We will see where they're at after that. But so far, I've not done the I've not seen the will to do that.
Paul, I was going to say, I didn't watch the whole series of the Springboks Lions, but what I did notice was basically the number of times that Russie was basically on the paddock. Trainers were on the paddock. Water boys and girls were on the paddock. That basically says to me they were micromanaged in such a way to play a specific style. I personally don't think the Springbok team has it in their MO. I think they will continue with this style. You can't all of a sudden just decide to go on a tour and you're going to basically develop a style. Even in the situation where they play the Australians on the weekend coming up. I know you don't spend too much time on this. All of a sudden, because they're desperate to win that second test against Australia, they are going to have to throw that same team out on the paddock again. And boy, a week's not enough to change your style. And you're going to have to go out and play that same style, but be a little bit more accurate. The only change I might see in that side, they'll probably put Mornay Steyn on the bench as a goal kicker to finish the game, and that'll pretty much tell me how conservative they are.
We'll see. I disagree. When you're on tour, you've got your players with you, so you have got more. One of the problems with being an international coach is the amount of time you have with the players. And being on tour is one of the few times you actually have control of the players for a long period of time. So it is one of the times where you can bring new things in and you can start embedding a style. So I'll disagree with you on that. I think they can change things during a tour, but it comes down to the want and whether they want to or not. And when I say that they've got this clash of player welfare versus speeding up the game, is that one of the things that does slow the game down is water boys running on all the time. And this isn't a go just at Raspberry, it's just in general. I would say, look, in the old days you got through a whole half without having any water and had an orange at half time. So how about no water boys on the pitch apart from after a try? Would be my one. To reduce the stoppages. And again, it's not just before I've got a couple of listeners from South Africa. It's not in South Africa. It's not just we've seen lots of other games where we've got the referees struggling to tell the water people to get off the pitch. So yes, so we'll see. That'd be one of my ones. Would be to do that. To do that there. So we'll see. Some actually said he liked Bill Beaumont, saying he knows when to speak. Yes, Bill Beaumont, does keep a relatively low profile in this, but I do see him as very much as a old school representative. I don't see him as someone who's really going to grow the game and really going to move things forward and expand the game. Personally, I just don't see how he can do it in some ways because of the grip that the tier one nations have on the council. At the end of the day, he can't do anything without them voting on it. So, the other news that's come out today is around Farah Palmer Cup fixtures. So we've got some fixtures lined up. So I will be at Bay of Plenty versus Otago on Saturday for that one. It's the only Farah Palmer Cup game this weekend, but there are three the following weekend with Otago versus Canterbury, Bay of Plenty versus Wellington, and Taranaki versus Hawke's Bay, all on the Saturday, and then on Sunday Tasman versus Manawatu. So sorry, there's 4 games next weekend in the Farah Palmer Cup. I'm going to have to see whether I can somehow bribe my daughters to taking them down to Bay of Plenty versus Wellington, if I'm allowed to take them in on that one. And then for the Bunning, the MPC have also announced their games for the for the next weekend. So not this weekend, but the weekend after. We've got the Friday night game will be Tasman versus Waikato, which should be an absolute cracker. Waikato really travelling well so far this season. Then on Saturday, 2 games, Manawatu versus Northland and Southland versus Canterbury. And then on Sunday, Wellington versus Hawke's Bay and Bay of Plenty versus Taranaki. Again, there might need to be some negotiations with my daughters about dropping them back with my ex-wife to try and get down in time for that Bay of Plenty game in Tauranga, but we'll have to wait and see on those ones, folks. At the weekend, we'll be doing post-match reactions straight after the 2 Rugby Championship games, as we have done. Again, I'll also put those out as a podcast as well. So keep a lookout for those. I guess the other news that came out today is Frizzell. Shannon Frizzell has had the charges dropped against him in this one. What are your feelings on this one as to it's obviously should he be drafted back into the All Black setup straight away? Should there be more punishment? Should there be more or has he already been? Should there not be double jeopardy? And what are your thoughts on the?
For me, Paul, it's just a little bit too soon to start drafting Frizzell back into this All Black team. He's going to have to, first of all, just keep his nose very, very clean, and just the only way I see him getting back in this team is just putting in some really, really great performances. The issue that he's got at the moment, the position that he was trying to cement, is now he's left that door open for Kiri Ioane. So I don't think he's going to get that jersey back anytime soon. For me, I know there was no conviction. A little bit uncomfortable at this stage. I suppose it's a very similar situation to Sevu Reece. And but once again, he went away, was just so outstanding for the Crusaders the following year, and then made his way back into the team. At the end of the day, he hasn't been convicted, but it's not a good look.
Yeah, I mean, slightly different. Sevu Reece did the charges weren't dropped, but so the charge was still there, but they just gave no conviction or something like that. Sort of lines, bit slight. So technically, from a lawyering point of view, there's a bit of a difference. But for me, I think Shannon Frizzell shouldn't go on the tour. Should be left at home to go through whatever counselling or rehabilitation work that he's doing. What I think New Zealand Rugby should do, though, which they didn't do with Sevu Reece. I know because of just talking to people who were part of the Chiefs and the Waikato setup, the Waikato setup, not Chiefs setup, that they helped him through that, and there was a whole bunch of counselling for him and his partner who was involved in that one, that situation. But I know none of that came to light, and none of that was made public, and so hence he's seen by a whole bunch of people on Twitter as a unrehabilitated person in that situation. So what I hope they do with Frizzell is that they actually let us know what rehabilitation and what he's going through to prove that he has changed. Because I believe Sevu Reece has worked on himself and has changed, but I can't prove that because they haven't told us. So for me, yeah, I think Frizzell. I think they should be a bit more transparent with that. I think Frizzell needs to sort out his off the pitch issues first before even considering getting back from that point of view.
Great point, Paul, because that way it just keeps everybody informed, all the stakeholders who have an interest in the game. you know exactly what happens, and it pretty much shuts everything down if he is ever selected for the All Blacks again. Everybody knows that he's actually been through a particular process. I know LB is just saying it's a weak NZ judicial system at play, but what I'll say to you, LB, if he wasn't an All Black, the individual would be going through the same, an unnamed person would be going through exactly the same process. I know there's a lot of people out there who say rugby players get a bit of a free ride, but listen, you can talk to anybody in the who's in the judiciary process, and they will tell you just about every day of the week there is somebody going through this particular process. They just don't happen to be a high profile individual.
Yeah, absolutely, and we've seen people get off, and I've felt uncomfortable about it because it appears wrong. I'll put it this way to me. But again, I'm not used to the New Zealand system, and I wasn't aware that. Apparently, various truck drivers, for example, haven't had their driver's license revoked when other people would do, because it's required for their job. And so, when we hear those sort of things, well, they got this because it's required for their job. What we don't realise is, what a lot of us don't realise is that it happens to a lot of other people. Now, whether you count that as being a weak judicial system or a strong one is your point of view, and that's up to you. I feel safe in New Zealand, so it feels that I don't feel the judicial system is letting out people that endanger me. But then again, maybe that's just I'm walking around and being naive. I don't know. So yeah, around that sort of things as to judgment on the judicial system, it is what it is. And as you're right, I don't think they're getting. I think they're getting treated the same way as the rest of the public.
I know one of the mottos, and you kind of set yourself up for this sometimes, Paul, was it Graham Henry who coined the phrase, better people make better All Blacks? Well,
yep.
every now and again, one or two are going to get through, and that's the way it is. And it just mirrors life. We want everybody to be nice, but sometimes you never quite know. There's a few rebels that get through, unfortunately.
Yeah, absolutely. So there you go. Those ones, some of the stuff we're talking about in the Driving More show this evening. Well, we've got the Rugby World Cup every 2 years, apparently, is an option. So we'll have a chat about that one. I think we'll probably go down the need new laws piece with a bit more detail this evening. I know Boa will be joining me on that one. I know he has very strong views on what the laws of the game should or shouldn't be. So those will be key ones. I think we'll also look forward to the Rugby Championship games this coming weekend, which is the return of the games we had this last weekend. I'll also give a little bit of a preview of the Farah Palmer Cup and the Bunnings FPC games as well. So that's what's in line for you at 8 p.m. this evening on the Driving More show, or you can listen to it as a podcast as well, folks. Thank you very much. Thank you to 09. Please keep following the lockdown laws and lockdown rules, and let's get out of this as soon as possible. I know there's some bad press and etc., but we do appreciate it outside of New Zealand, outside of Auckland, the hardship you guys are going through, and we're trying to be here for you as we can be.
And just finally sending some love to those guys over in South Africa who are tuning into the show. Hey, I will gladly eat a whole lot of humble pie if the Springboks completely change their game plan. So I'm really looking forward to this, because I think they've got a lot of strike weapons out wide, and they don't use them enough.
Well, I'll say straight up that they're not world champions for nothing. And any All Blacks fans who think that those two games are going to be easy really are in for a very tough shock in 2 weeks' time, because those games are going to be absolute battles and cracking games. I'm really looking forward to them in that one. They're going to be a titanic struggle. They're not going to be easy games by any stretch of the imagination. Thank you, Stephen, for joining me. Thank you, everyone who's joined us in the live chat. And don't forget, also, last thing, you can become a supporter of NZ Sports Radio and help us to bring you all this content. Patreon.com/NZ Sport Radio. And have a great day. I'll be back in, just over a couple of hours.